Unspoken. A BL novel chapter 1. The scan Kai's fingers trembled as he organized his notes for the third time that morning. The anatomy lecture didn't start for another 20 minutes, but he'd already arranged his colored pens in perfect order. Blue for structures, red for pathology, green for clinical applications. His water bottle sat precisely at the corner of his desk. His laptop was positioned at exactly a 45-degree angle. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be controlled. Because if one thing fell apart, everything fell apart. He was scanning the lecture hall as people filtered in, reading faces the way other people read books. There, Professor Chen was smiling, which meant she was in a good mood, which meant she wouldn't call on unprepared students. The guy in the third row was yawning. He'd probably stayed up late studying. The girl near the back looked stressed. Her exam probably hadn't gone well. Kai did this constantly, unconsciously. A survival mechanism so ingrained he barely noticed it anymore. What he did notice was the moment a tall figure walked through the door and sat 3 rows ahead of him, slightly to the left. The guy had dark hair, pale skin, and the kind of face that didn't give anything away. He wore a plain black hoodie and carried a single notebook. He didn't organize anything. He didn't arrange his materials. He just sat down and stared straight ahead at the whiteboard, even though the lecture hadn't started yet. Kai found himself staring at him instead of his notes. The guy never looked around, never checked his phone, never made eye contact with anyone. He just existed in the lecture hall like he was somewhere else entirely, physically present but mentally absent. Something about that fascinated Kai, terrified him a little too. When Professor Chen started the lecture, Kai tried to focus. He really did, but his eyes kept drifting to the guy 3 rows ahead. The guy took notes in a surprisingly neat handwriting, though his posture was terrible, slouched like he was conserving energy. He never raised his hand, never asked a question, just absorbed information and moved on. By the end of the lecture, Kai had filled 3 pages of notes and retained almost nothing about the cardiovascular system. This was bad. This was very bad. Kai didn't do distractions. Distractions led to mistakes. Mistakes led to failure. Failure led to... Well, he didn't let himself think that far ahead. That way lay panic. He packed up his materials with methodical precision and headed to his next class, deliberately not looking at the guy again. He was fine. This was fine. It was just a random, attractive person in his lecture hall. Nothing to spiral about. Except he did spiral about it, all through his next 2 classes, during his lunch break, and while he was supposedly studying in the library that afternoon. Soren didn't notice the guy staring at him during anatomy lecture. He didn't notice most things, actually. His mind was somewhere else. A brief he was reading for his law seminar, the way his roommate had made a passive-aggressive comment about dishes that morning, the general low-level exhaustion that had become his baseline. He existed in a state of constant, quiet disconnection. Not depression exactly, not quite apathy, just a persistent sense of being slightly outside of everything, observing rather than participating. His therapist called it emotional detachment. Soren called it survival. When he was a kid, emotions were inconvenient. His father was a successful lawyer who believed feelings were for people who couldn't control themselves. His mother had learned to mirror his coldness, and his older sister had learned to perform perfection instead of expressing anything real. The message was clear. Your value is in your achievement, not your vulnerability. By the time Soren was in high school, he'd internalized it completely. He could read other people's emotions with startling accuracy, a survival mechanism from learning to navigate his father's moods, but expressing his own felt like trying to speak a language he'd never learned. The words didn't exist. The mechanism didn't work. He'd tried once, in a relationship his 2nd year of university. His ex-boyfriend had wanted emotional reassurance constantly. Soren had tried to give it, but every attempt felt performative, wrong, like he was reading lines from a script he didn't understand. Eventually, his ex had gotten tired of trying to extract feelings from a stone. So now Soren didn't try. He conserved his emotional energy like it was a finite resource. He showed up. He was reliable. He fixed things quietly. He listened without offering unsolicited advice. He kept the things people gave him, even small things. But he didn't say, I love you, or I miss you, or I'm thinking of you. He just showed up. It was enough for most people. Or maybe it wasn't, and they just didn't tell him. He didn't think about the guy staring at him during anatomy. He didn't think about much of anything, really. He just moved through his days like a person on autopilot, present but not quite alive. 3 days later, Kai was having a panic attack in the bathroom stall on the third floor of the medical school building. It had started small, a text from his mother asking how his exams were going. A simple question. But Kai had immediately spiraled. What if he told her he was struggling with anatomy? What if she thought he wasn't smart enough for medicine? What if she told his father, who already thought medicine was impractical? What if he failed out? What if he disappointed everyone? The what-ifs had multiplied exponentially, each one branching into a dozen more, until his chest felt tight and his breathing had become shallow and rapid. He'd excused himself from the study group he was with and locked himself in a bathroom stall, leaning against the cold metal divider. His phone buzzed. Another text from his mother. His hands shook as he typed back, "I'm fine, just busy, talk later." He wasn't fine. He was very much not fine. His heart was racing. His vision felt slightly fuzzy. He was hyper-aware of every sound in the bathroom, footsteps, a toilet flushing, someone washing their hands, and each noise felt like a threat, like proof that he was being watched, judged, found wanting. Breathe, he told himself. Just breathe. He'd learned breathing techniques. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. He'd done this dozens of times. But knowing the technique and actually executing it while your nervous system was screaming danger were two very different things. After about 5 minutes, his heart rate slowed. The fuzzy feeling receded. He was left with the familiar exhaustion that always followed a panic attack, like he'd just run a marathon while sitting still. He checked his reflection in the mirror. His face was flushed, but otherwise he looked fine. Put together, reliable, like someone who definitely wasn't having a mental health crisis in a bathroom stall. He practiced his smile, the one he used for class, for study groups, for his parents. It was a good smile, convincing. No one ever suspected. By the time he left the bathroom, he was fine, completely fine, just a medical student who needed a quick break. Soren was standing at the sink washing his hands when Kai came out of the stall. He didn't look at Kai directly. Eye contact during these moments felt invasive, but he was aware of him. Aware of the flushed face, the slightly shaky hands, the way Kai was carefully arranging his expression into something neutral. Soren recognized the signs. He'd seen them before in people who were falling apart while pretending they were fine. It was a particular kind of performance, and he was good at spotting it because he'd been doing it his entire life. He didn't say anything. What would he say? "Are you okay?" was a stupid question when someone clearly wasn't okay but was pretending they were. "Do you need help?" would probably make it worse. Any emotional acknowledgement would probably make the guy uncomfortable. So Soren just washed his hands and left, leaving the guy alone with his carefully constructed facade. He didn't think about it again, or he tried not to, but something about the moment stuck with him, the way the guy had looked so desperate to appear fine. It resonated with something in Soren, some recognition of a kindred spirit, not that it mattered. Soren wasn't good at connecting with people. He was good at existing in parallel to them, present but separate. Chapter 2. Proximity. The universe, apparently, had a sense of irony. 2 weeks later, Kai walked into his pathophysiology seminar and found that the seating arrangement had changed. The professor had assigned seats to encourage collaborative learning, which Kai interpreted as a personal attack on his carefully constructed comfort zone. His assigned seat was next to the emotionally unavailable guy from anatomy. Of course it was. Kai spent the first 5 minutes of class trying to calm his racing thoughts. This was fine. Sitting next to someone was not a big deal. He could do this. He just had to be normal, act normal, not let his anxiety show. The guy, Kai still didn't know his name, sat down without acknowledging him. He opened his notebook and waited for the professor to start speaking. He had the kind of posture that suggested he was conserving energy, like existing took effort he wasn't sure he had. "Hi," Kai whispered, because apparently his anxiety-riddled brain thought this was a good idea. "I'm Kai." The guy turned his head slowly, like the movement required thought. His eyes were a pale gray-blue, and they looked at Kai with the kind of neutral expression that could mean anything. "Soren," he said. His voice was quiet, measured. Not cold exactly, but not warm either. "Cool," Kai said, and then immediately wanted to die. Cool? What was cool about introducing yourself? He was such an idiot. Soren had already turned back to face the front of the class, conversation apparently over. Kai spent the entire seminar acutely aware of Soren's presence next to him, the way he took notes, the way his leg bounced slightly under the desk, the only sign that he wasn't completely composed. The way he never looked at Kai, not once, even when Kai desperately wanted him to. By the time the seminar ended, Kai had convinced himself that Soren hated him. Soren didn't hate Kai. He didn't have strong feelings about Kai one way or another. The guy seemed nice enough, nervous maybe, which was interesting. Most people weren't nervous around Soren. They just found him cold and moved on. But this guy, Kai, had introduced himself, had made an effort, and Soren had shut him down with a one-word response and a return to his notes. He'd done that because he didn't know how to do small talk. Because, "Hi, I'm Kai," had required a response that involved more than just existing, and Soren had panicked in his own quiet way and retreated to what he knew: silence. He wondered if Kai thought he was rude. Probably. Most people did eventually. It didn't matter. In a few weeks, they'd have a new seating arrangement, and he'd never have to think about Kai again. Except that wasn't how it worked, because the professor kept them in the same seats for the entire semester. Over the next 3 weeks, a strange dynamic developed. Kai would arrive at seminar early and sit down, arranging his materials with anxious precision. Soren would arrive just as the professor was about to start, sit down without acknowledging Kai, and pull out his notebook. During the seminar, Kai would take notes frantically, occasionally glancing at Soren to see if he was understanding the material. Soren would take notes in his steady, neat handwriting, never glancing at Kai. After class, Kai would pack up slowly, hoping Soren would say something. Soren would pack up at a normal pace and leave without saying anything. It was torture. Beautiful, confusing torture. Kai had started researching Soren, not in a creepy way. Okay, maybe a little in a creepy way. He'd found his Instagram private, his Facebook minimal activity, and his LinkedIn law school no profile picture. He was in the law school building most days. He lived off campus based on a post he'd liked from someone mentioning their shared apartment. He seemed to have very few friends, or at least very few people who publicly interacted with him. Kai was spiraling. He knew he was spiraling, but he couldn't seem to stop. His study group had started noticing. "You're distracted," his friend Maya had said last week. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Kai had lied. "Just stressed about exams." He was stressed about exams. He was also obsessing over a guy who'd said exactly one word to him 3 weeks ago. The panic attacks had gotten worse. He was having them more frequently now, and they were lasting longer. He'd had one in the library, one in his apartment, one in the car on the way to class. Each one left him more exhausted, more convinced that something was fundamentally wrong with him. He needed help. He knew he needed help. But asking for help meant admitting he couldn't handle things on his own, and Kai had built his entire identity on handling things. Soren was aware that something had shifted. The guy, Kai, was clearly anxious about something. His leg bounced during seminar. His hands shook slightly when he was taking notes. He would glance at Soren repeatedly like he was looking for something. Reassurance, maybe, or just acknowledgement. Soren understood the need to be acknowledged. It was his deepest, most buried need, the one he never admitted to anyone: to be seen, to matter. To be chosen not because he was useful or reliable, but because he was worth choosing. He wanted to say something to Kai, to bridge the gap that had formed between them, but he didn't know what to say. "Are you okay?" felt invasive. "Do you want to get coffee?" felt like too much. Any emotional overture felt like it would come out wrong, performative, like he was reading lines from a script. So he said nothing. He just existed next to Kai, present but separate, watching him fall apart and not knowing how to help. One day, after seminar, Kai's notebook fell on the floor. Soren picked it up without thinking and handed it to him. "Thanks," Kai said, and his voice sounded relieved, like this small gesture had meant something. Soren nodded and left. He didn't think about the fact that he'd started noticing when Kai arrived at seminar, that he'd started sitting slightly closer to him. That he'd started listening to Kai's comments more carefully, even though Kai rarely spoke up in class. He definitely didn't think about the fact that he'd started wanting Kai to notice him, to acknowledge him, to see him the way Soren was starting to see Kai, because that way lay complications, and Soren didn't do complications. Chapter 3. The project. The professor announced the project on a Thursday, a semester-long case study on a complex medical and legal intersection. They would be working in pairs, and the pairs had been assigned. Kai and Soren were partners. Kai's first instinct was panic. His second instinct was to convince himself this was an opportunity. His third instinct was to spiral about all the ways he could mess this up. He waited until after class to approach Soren, his heart hammering in his chest. "Hey, so, We're partners for the project. Yeah, Soren said. He didn't seem particularly excited or upset about this development, just factual. Should we exchange numbers so we can coordinate? Soren was quiet for a moment. Then he said, sure, and pulled out his phone. They exchanged numbers. Kai texted him that night. Hey, it's Kai. So I was thinking we could meet up this weekend to start brainstorming ideas for the project. Soren didn't respond until the next morning. Okay, coffee shop near campus. 10 am Saturday. Kai spent the next 24 hours in a state of controlled panic. This was good. This was an opportunity to get to know Soren better. This was also terrifying because what if Soren thought he was weird? What if he was boring? What if he had another panic attack during their meeting? Saturday morning arrived with the speed of an oncoming train. Kai arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, ordered a coffee he didn't need, and sat at a table where he could see the door. He changed his outfit 3 times. He checked his reflection in the mirror approximately 17 times. He was as prepared as he could be. Soren arrived at exactly 10 a.m. He was wearing the same black hoodie he wore to most classes. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd just rolled out of bed. He looked tired. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. But he was here. Hey, Kai said, trying to sound casual, trying to sound like his heart wasn't in his throat. Hey, Soren replied. He sat down across from Kai without getting a drink. So, project. Right, yeah, I was thinking we could look at cases involving medical malpractice and the legal implications, or maybe something about informed consent and the ethical responsibilities of. You've already thought about this, Soren said. It wasn't a question. Kai felt his face flush. I mean, yeah, a little. I couldn't sleep last night, so I was just thinking about it. Couldn't sleep because of the project. No, I mean, yes, I mean. Kai took a breath. I have trouble sleeping sometimes. My mind just keeps going. Soren nodded slowly. He didn't say anything, but there was something in his expression that suggested he understood, or at least that he wasn't judging. The informed consent angle is good, Soren said finally. There's a lot of legal gray area there. A lot of cases where the medical and legal perspectives conflict. They spent the next hour discussing the project. Kai had prepared notes. Soren had ideas. They worked surprisingly well together. Kai's anxiety-driven thoroughness complemented Soren's logical approach. Kai would spiral about details, and Soren would calmly point out what actually mattered. By the time they left the coffee shop, they'd outlined the entire project and divided the initial research. This was good, Soren said as they stood outside. We work well together. Yeah, Kai agreed. His heart was still hammering, but it was a different kind of hammering now, a better kind. We do. Soren looked at him for a moment, actually looked at him, made eye contact, and Kai felt something shift in his chest, something that felt dangerously like falling. I'll start on the legal precedent research, Soren said. You want to handle the medical side? Yeah, I can do that. Cool, Soren said. And then he walked away, leaving Kai standing on the sidewalk, clutching his coffee cup and wondering what the hell was happening to him. Soren was aware that something had shifted too. Kai was nervous, anxious. His leg had bounced under the table the entire time they were talking, but he'd also been thoughtful and detailed and genuinely interested in the project. He'd prepared notes. He'd had ideas. He'd looked at Soren with an intensity that suggested he actually cared what Soren thought. No one usually cared what Soren thought. People tolerated him. They appreciated his reliability. But they didn't care about his opinions, his ideas, his perspective. Kai had seemed to care, and Soren had made eye contact with him at the end, which was something he almost never did. It had felt necessary. Like Kai needed to see that Soren was present, that he was here, that he mattered. The eye contact had probably been a mistake. It had probably sent a signal Soren didn't intend. But Kai had looked at him like he'd just said something profound, and Soren hadn't known how to take it back. He spent the next week researching legal precedent for informed consent cases, taking notes in his careful handwriting. He found himself thinking about Kai's anxiety, about the way his hands shook, about the way he looked like he was always bracing for something bad to happen. Soren wanted to tell him it would be okay, but he didn't know if that was true, and he didn't know how to say it anyway. So he just did the research. He did it thoroughly. He did it well. He did it because Kai was counting on him, and Soren didn't let people down. It was his love language, even if he didn't have words for it. Chapter 4. The rift begins by week 4 of the project. Kai and Soren had fallen into a routine. They'd meet twice a week at the coffee shop. They'd work on their research. They'd discuss their findings. They'd slowly, carefully start to talk about things other than the project. Kai learned that Soren had a dry sense of humor, that he was genuinely interested in understanding complex legal problems, that he had a habit of staring at the ceiling when he was thinking, that he texted back quickly but with minimal punctuation. Soren learned that Kai was obsessively organized, that he overthought everything, that his anxiety manifested as meticulous preparation, that he smiled with his entire face when something made him happy. Neither of them acknowledged what was happening, the slow gravitational pull toward each other, the way their knees would almost touch under the table, the way they'd started sitting closer. The way Kai would text Soren about random things, a funny video, an article about a case, just, "Hey, how's your day going?" And Soren would respond. Always. Even if it was just a few words, he'd respond. But they didn't talk about it. They didn't acknowledge the shift. They just existed in this strange liminal space where they were more than acquaintances but not quite something else. Then Kai's anxiety caught up with him. It started small. A comment Soren made during one of their study sessions. "I think we should focus more on the legal side of this. The medical stuff is pretty straightforward." Kai's brain immediately translated this to, "He thinks your medical research is stupid. He doesn't value your contribution. He's going to realize you're not smart enough for this partnership." He'd nodded and agreed, but something had shifted. A seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few days, Kai started noticing things. The way Soren would sometimes seem distant during their meetings. The way he'd take longer to respond to texts. The way he'd said cool in response to Kai's idea for restructuring their analysis. And cool could mean anything. Cool could mean good. Cool could mean he was being polite. Cool could mean he didn't care. By the time Kai realized he was spiraling, he was already deep in it. He started analyzing every interaction, every text message, every moment of silence. He replayed conversations at night, looking for hidden meanings. He convinced himself that Soren was losing interest, that he'd realized Kai was too anxious, too much, too needy. The panic attacks came back with a vengeance. He had one in the library, one in his apartment. One in the car on the way to meet Soren for their study session. He almost canceled that last one, but he couldn't cancel because what if Soren thought he was flacking? What if that confirmed that Kai wasn't reliable? So he went. He sat across from Soren at their usual table and he tried to act normal while his heart was racing and his hands were shaking slightly. "You okay?" Soren asked. "Yeah, I'm fine," Kai lied. Soren looked at him for a moment. Then he said okay and went back to his research. He didn't push. He didn't ask follow-up questions. He just accepted the lie and moved on, and that somehow made it worse. Because if Soren cared, wouldn't he push? Wouldn't he want to know what was wrong? Unless he didn't care. Unless Kai was just a project partner to him, a means to an end. That night, Kai texted him, "Hey, is everything okay between us?" Soren didn't respond for 20 minutes. 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. Then, "Yeah, why? You just seem distant lately." Another long pause. Then, "I'm not. Everything's fine." But everything's fine could mean anything. And Kai's anxiety-riddled brain heard, "I don't want to talk about this. You're being annoying. Leave me alone." He didn't respond. He just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, convinced that he'd ruined everything. Soren had no idea what he'd done wrong. One moment, things were fine. They were working well together. They were texting. They were building something that felt like it might be more than just a project partnership. The next moment, Kai was asking if everything was okay, and Soren had panicked. When people asked if everything was okay, they usually wanted emotional reassurance. They wanted him to say something meaningful, something that proved he cared, something that wasn't just the bare minimum. Soren didn't know how to do that. The words didn't exist in his vocabulary, so he'd said the most honest thing he could. "Everything's fine." Which was true, as far as he could tell. Everything was fine. He was fine. Kai was fine. The project was fine, but apparently that wasn't enough. He'd wanted to text something more, something warmer, something that would reassure Kai that yes, he cared. Yes, Kai mattered. Yes, whatever was happening between them was real. But he didn't know how to say those things. So he'd said nothing, and now Kai wasn't responding, and Soren was left with the familiar feeling of having failed at human connection. He texted him the next day. "We still on for Thursday?" No response. Friday. "Kai." Still nothing. Soren told himself it didn't matter. That he'd gotten too close anyway. That this was what happened when he tried to connect with people. They realized he was emotionally unavailable and moved on. But it did matter. It mattered a lot more than he wanted to admit. Chapter 5. The therapy revelation. Kai had finally done it. He'd made an appointment with a therapist. It had taken him 2 weeks of spiraling and panic attacks to work up the courage, but he'd done it. Dr. Morrison's office was warm and neutral, decorated in shades of beige and cream. There was a box of tissues on the table next to the couch. It was exactly the kind of place where people came to fall apart. "So, Kai," Dr. Morrison said, settling into her chair across from him. "Tell me what brought you in today." Kai took a shaky breath. "I've been having panic attacks, a lot of them, and I can't seem to stop spiraling about things. I overthink everything. I replay conversations. I'm convinced that people are mad at me even when they're not. Or maybe they are and I just can't tell." "How long has this been going on?" "Always, I think, but it's gotten worse recently. There's this person." Kai paused. He wasn't sure how much to reveal. "A friend, or maybe not a friend, I don't know, but I think I've messed things up with him and now I'm convinced he hates me." "What makes you think you've messed things up?" He seemed distant. "And I asked him about it and he said everything was fine, but I don't believe him. I think he's just being nice. I think he's actually mad at me." Dr. Morrison nodded. She didn't write anything down, which somehow made the moment feel more real. "Kai, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. Is it possible that when he said everything was fine, he meant that everything was actually fine? But he seemed distant. People can seem distant for lots of reasons that have nothing to do with you. Stress, tiredness, their own anxiety. It doesn't necessarily mean they're angry with you." Kai knew that intellectually. But emotionally, it felt impossible. "I know, but I'm hearing a lot of catastrophizing," Dr. Morrison said gently. "A lot of jumping from he seemed quiet to he hates me. Does that pattern sound familiar?" "Yeah," Kai admitted. "It's always been like that. My mom used to say I was too sensitive, that I read too much into things. Do you think that's accurate?" "I don't know, maybe, probably." "Or," Dr. Morrison said, "maybe you're not too sensitive, maybe you're just anxious." There's a difference. Sensitivity is a trait. Anxiety is a response to perceived threat. And your brain is very good at perceiving threats, even when they're not really there. Over the next hour, Dr. Morrison walked Kai through some of the basics of anxiety, how it works, why his brain does this, how to start recognizing when he's spiraling versus when there's an actual problem. By the end of the session, Kai felt simultaneously better and worse. Better because he finally had a name for what was happening. Worse because he realized how much of his life had been dictated by this anxiety. "I want you to do something for me," Dr. Morrison said as he was leaving. "When you find yourself spiraling, I want you to pause and ask yourself, is this a real threat or is my anxiety telling me it's a threat? Can help you start to separate the two." Kai nodded. He scheduled his next appointment for the following week. As he was walking to his car, he realized he should probably tell Soren that he'd been in therapy, that he was working on his anxiety, that his spiraling wasn't Soren's fault. But what if Soren didn't care? What if he'd already moved on? Kai's phone buzzed, a text from Soren. "Hey, haven't heard from you, everything okay?" Kai's heart jumped. Soren was checking on him, that had to mean something. He typed back, "Yeah, sorry. I've been dealing with some stuff. Can we talk?" This time, Soren responded immediately. "Yeah, when?" They met at the coffee shop the next day. Soren arrived first, which was unusual. He was sitting at their usual table, looking like he hadn't slept well. When Kai arrived, Soren looked at him with an expression that was hard to read, but underneath the blankness, Kai could see something. Concern, maybe, or just relief that Kai had shown up. "Hi," Kai said, sitting down across from him. "Hi," Soren replied. Kai took a breath. "I started seeing a therapist. I've been having panic attacks and I've been spiraling about things about us. I thought you were mad at me, but I think that was just my anxiety talking." Soren was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm not mad at you. I know, I think I know that now, but I was convinced you were. I was replaying everything you said, looking for hidden meanings, and I think I made it weird." "You didn't make it weird," Soren said. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Something that sounded like he was trying to reassure himself as much as Kai. "I really thought you hated me," Kai said quietly. "I don't hate you," Soren said. He looked directly at Kai, and for a moment, Kai could see past the emotional detachment to whatever was underneath. Something vulnerable, something that wanted to be seen. "I could never hate you." Kai felt his chest tighten. The way Soren had said that, with such certainty, such finality, suggested that his feelings went deeper than just project partnership. But before Kai could say anything, Soren looked away. The moment had passed, the walls were back up. "So you're in therapy," Soren said, shifting the conversation to safer ground. "That's good, that's really good." "Yeah, I think it's helping. She's teaching me how to recognize when I'm spiraling versus when there's an actual problem." "That sounds useful." "It is." I'm sorry I shut you out. I'm sorry I didn't tell you what was going on. You don't have to apologize, Soren said. You're dealing with something that's not something you have to explain to me. But Kai wanted to explain it to him, wanted Soren to understand, wanted Soren to understand him. I want to keep working on the project, Kai said. With you, if you want to. Yeah, Soren said. I want to. They spent the next hour discussing the project, rebuilding the easy rhythm they'd had before. But something had shifted. Kai had been vulnerable, had admitted his struggles, and Soren had responded with acceptance rather than rejection. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was something. A small acknowledgement that Kai mattered, that his struggles mattered, and for Kai, that was enough. For now, Unspoken, a BL novel, continued, Chapter 6. Deeper waters the weeks after Kai's therapy revelation were strange and electric. They resumed their study sessions with renewed intensity. The project was coming together beautifully, their combined perspectives creating something neither could have achieved alone. But underneath the academic work, something else was happening, something neither of them had words for. Kai would arrive at the coffee shop and find Soren already there, waiting. Soren would text him good night, even though it was just a single letter. Gee. Kai would bring Soren's favorite drink without being asked. Soren would rearrange his schedule when Kai said he was having a rough day. Small gestures, quiet acknowledgments, love languages spoken in a dialect neither of them fully understood. One evening, they were working late at the library. The coffee shop had closed, so they'd migrated to one of the study rooms. Kai was stressed about an exam, his anxiety manifesting as obsessive note-taking. Soren was watching him, his pale eyes tracking Kai's movements with an intensity that made Kai's skin feel too tight. You're going to burn out, Soren said finally. I know, but I have to. You don't have to do anything right now except breathe, Soren said. He reached over and gently took the pen from Kai's hand. Stop! Kai looked at him, surprised. Soren rarely initiated physical contact, rarely gave direct orders. But his hand was warm on Kai's and his expression was serious. I can't stop, Kai said. If I stop, I'll start spiraling. Or, Soren said quietly, you'll just rest. You'll let yourself be tired. You'll let yourself be human. Soren didn't let go of his hand. They sat like that for a long moment, Kai's racing thoughts gradually slowing under the weight of Soren's steady presence. Thank you, Kai whispered. For what? For being here, for not leaving when things got complicated. Soren's jaw tightened slightly. I'm not going anywhere. It was the most direct emotional statement Soren had ever made, and it hit Kai like a physical force. Soren was aware that he was failing at maintaining emotional distance. He'd spent his entire life perfecting the art of detachment. It was his armor, his survival mechanism. But Kai was systematically dismantling it, one small gesture at a time. The way Kai looked at him, the way he'd started touching Soren's arm when he was talking to him, the way he'd asked Soren about his day, actually asked and actually listened to the answer. No one had ever really listened to Soren before. They'd tolerated his presence. They'd appreciated his reliability. But they hadn't seen him, not like Kai was starting to see him. It terrified him. It also made him want to be better, to be someone worthy of being seen. But he still didn't know how to say the things he wanted to say, how to express the things he was starting to feel. So he showed up. He listened. He made sure Kai had coffee the way he liked it. He rearranged his schedule. He let Kai hold his hand in the library study room. It wasn't enough. He knew it wasn't enough, but it was all he had. One night after they'd finished working on the project, Kai said, Do you want to get dinner? Like not as part of the project, just dinner. Soren's heart rate spiked. This was a date. Kai was asking him on a date. Yeah, he said. I want that. Chapter 7. The first kiss the restaurant Kai chose was small and quiet, tucked away on a side street. Soft lighting, candles on the tables. The kind of place where people came when they wanted to be intimate without being too obvious about it. I was nervous. Soren could tell by the way his leg bounced under the table, by the way he kept adjusting his napkin, by the way he smiled too brightly at the waiter. You okay? Soren asked. Yeah, I'm just nervous. I haven't done this in a while, dadding, I mean, and I really don't want to mess this up. You won't, Soren said. He reached across the table and covered Kai's hand with his own. You couldn't if you tried. Kai looked at their hands, then at Soren's face. How are you so calm about this? I'm not, Soren admitted. I'm terrified, but I'm also really glad you're here. It was vulnerable for Soren, admitting fear, admitting that Kai mattered enough to be scared of losing him. Kai's eyes got slightly wet. I'm really glad you're here too. They ate dinner slowly, talking about things that had nothing to do with school or the project. Soren told Kai about his family, the cold perfectionism that had shaped him. Kai told Soren about his parents' expectations, the way he'd learned early that his value was in his achievement. By the time they left the restaurant, the sun had set. They walked through the quiet streets, their shoulders almost touching. "Can I ask you something?" Kai said. "Always. When you were in that bathroom during anatomy lecture the day I had a panic attack, you saw me, didn't you?" Soren nodded slowly. "Yeah, I saw you. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't know what to say. Because anything I said would have been wrong. Because I've spent my entire life not knowing how to help people, and I didn't want to make it worse." "You wouldn't have made it worse," Kai said. "Just knowing that you saw me would have helped." They stopped walking. They were in a quiet park away from the street lights. Soren turned to face Kai, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "I see you," Soren said. "I see how hard you try, I see how much you care, I see how scared you are, and I see how brave you are anyway. I see you, Kai." Kai made a small sound, something between a laugh and a sob. "I see you too. I see how much you feel, even though you pretend you don't. I see how much you care, even though you show it in quiet ways. I see you." Soren reached up and cupped Kai's face in his hands. He'd never been good at verbal communication, but this he could do. He could show Kai what he felt. He kissed him slowly, carefully, like Kai was something precious and fragile. Kai kissed him back with intensity, with all the emotion he'd been holding back for weeks. When they broke apart, Kai was shaking slightly. "That was," Kai started. "Yeah," Soren said. "It was." They kissed again, and this time it was less careful. It was desperate and hungry and full of all the things they couldn't say out loud. Chapter 8. The honeymoon phase. For the next month, they existed in a bubble of new love. Kai would text Soren throughout the day. Soren would respond always, even if it was just a single word. They'd spend their study sessions with their knees touching under the table. They'd kiss in the library stacks when they thought no one was looking. They'd text each other good night and good morning. Kai's panic attacks became less frequent. Having Soren to anchor him made a difference. Soren was becoming more expressive, more willing to initiate contact, more willing to be vulnerable. It felt like they were building something real, something that could last. But underneath the honeymoon phase, there were cracks forming. Kai was still in therapy, working on his anxiety, but he was also becoming hyper-aware of Soren's emotional limitations. The way Soren would shut down during difficult conversations. The way he'd go silent when Kai tried to talk about his feelings. The way he still struggled to say, "I love you," even though Kai had said it multiple times. And Soren was starting to feel the pressure of Kai's emotional needs. The constant check-ins. The way Kai seemed to need reassurance about their relationship every few days. The way his anxiety would spiral if Soren didn't respond to a text within a certain time frame. It was becoming exhausting for both of them, though neither wanted to admit it. Chapter 9. The therapy bombshell. Kai was in therapy when he finally asked the question that would change everything. "Have you ever thought about going to therapy?" he asked Dr. Morrison. "For Soren, I mean. He has emotional detachment issues, and I think it would really help him if—" "Kai," Dr. Morrison interrupted gently, "are you trying to fix Soren?" Kai felt his face flush. "No, I just think he'd benefit from it." "Why do you think that?" "Because he struggles to express his emotions, because he shuts down during difficult conversations, because I think he has a lot of unresolved trauma from his family." "Those are all valid observations," Dr. Morrison said. "But here's the thing, Soren has to want to go to therapy. You can't want it for him, you can't fix him, you can only work on yourself." "I know that, but nothing," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "I'm hearing something concerning here. I'm hearing someone who's trying to manage another person's mental health. That's not your job, Kai, that's a therapist's job." Kai sat with that for a moment. She was right. He knew she was right. But the thought of Soren struggling, of Soren not getting help, made Kai's anxiety spike. "What if he doesn't want to go?" Kai asked. "Then that's his choice, and you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with loving someone who doesn't want to change." That night, Kai decided to suggest therapy to Soren. He did it casually over dinner. "Hey, have you ever thought about going to therapy? I think it might help with some of the stuff you've been dealing with." Soren's entire body went rigid. "No," he said flatly. "You don't have to say no right away, just think about it." "I don't need therapy," Soren said. His voice was cold now, distant. The walls were going up. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You struggle to express your emotions. You shut down when things get difficult. You have unresolved trauma from your family. So now you're a therapist," Soren said, and there was an edge to his voice that Kai had never heard before. You think you can diagnose me based on a few months of dating? That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying. Soren stood up from the table. You think I'm broken. You think you can fix me if I just go to therapy. Well, I don't want to be fixed, Kai. I don't want to change. And I don't appreciate you trying to. Soren! But he was already walking away, leaving Kai sitting alone at the dinner table, his heart pounding. Chapter 10, The Rift. The next morning, Kai woke up to find that Soren hadn't responded to any of his texts from the night before. He texted him, Hey, I'm sorry about last night. Can we talk? No response. He tried calling. It went to voicemail. By afternoon, panic was setting in. Kai had a panic attack in his apartment, alone, hyperventilating into a pillow so his roommate wouldn't hear. His brain was spinning. Catastrophically, Soren was breaking up with him. Soren hated him. Soren was going to leave him just like everyone else did. He texted Soren again, Please talk to me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. Still nothing. By the next day, Kai had spiraled into a dark place. He was convinced that Soren was cheating on him. That's why he wasn't responding. That's why he was avoiding him. He was probably with someone else, someone who didn't try to fix him, someone who was emotionally available in ways Kai wasn't. Or maybe Soren was leaving him. Maybe he'd realized Kai was too much, too needy, too anxious. Maybe he'd decided he was done. Kai's therapist had told him to ask himself, Is this a real threat, or is my anxiety telling me it's a threat? But his anxiety was so loud, so convincing, that he couldn't hear the truth underneath. When Soren finally responded, 3 days later it was a text. We need to talk, not at the coffee shop, my apartment, tonight. Kai's heart sank. That was the tone of someone ending a relationship. Soren had spent the last 3 days in a state of controlled panic that he didn't know how to express. Kai had tried to fix him, had diagnosed him, had decided that Soren was broken and needed to be repaired. And Soren's first instinct had been to run, to shut down, to retreat into the emotional detachment that had protected him his entire life. But he couldn't stop thinking about Kai, about the way Kai looked at him, about the way Kai had said, I see you, about the way Kai was trying, however clumsily, to help him. The truth was, Soren was terrified. He was terrified of therapy because therapy meant admitting that he was broken. It meant admitting that his father's cold perfectionism had damaged him. It meant being vulnerable in a way he'd never been before. And he was also terrified of losing Kai. So he'd sent the text. And now Kai was coming over, and Soren had no idea what he was going to say. When Kai arrived at his apartment, he looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking. He looked like he was bracing for the worst. Hey, Soren said, and his voice came out softer than he intended. Hi, Kai replied. He sat down on the couch, keeping distance between them. Are you breaking up with me? No, Soren said immediately. God, no, is that what you thought? You weren't responding, you were avoiding me. What else was I supposed to think? I was scared, Soren said. He sat down next to Kai, not touching him. You tried to fix me, you tried to diagnose me, and I panicked. I did what I always do, I shut down and pushed you away. I'm sorry, Kai said. I shouldn't have suggested therapy, that was out of line, I was trying to help, but I was actually being controlling. You weren't being controlling, Soren said. You were being you, you care about me, you wanted to help. And I couldn't handle that because I don't know how to accept help. I don't know how to let people in. So what do we do? Kai asked quietly. I don't know, Soren admitted. I'm not good at this, at relationships, at communication, at any of this. Neither am I, Kai said. I'm anxious and I spiral and I try to fix people who don't want to be fixed. They sat in silence for a long moment. I think, Soren said finally, that we're both kind of a mess. Yeah, Kai agreed. We are, but I don't want to break up, Soren said. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you either, Kai said, but the damage had been done. The trust had been fractured, and neither of them knew how to repair it. Chapter 11. The long winter, the weeks that followed were painful and confusing. Kai and Soren were still together, technically. They still studied together, they still texted. They still kissed sometimes, but something fundamental had shifted. Kai's anxiety about Soren not responding to texts had evolved into paranoia. Every time Soren was quiet, Kai's mind spiraled. Was he cheating? Was he leaving? Was he talking to someone else? Soren could feel the suspicion, even though Kai tried to hide it. And it made him retreat further into emotional detachment. If Kai didn't trust him, why try? Why be vulnerable? They were trapped in a cycle. Kai would get anxious. Soren would shut down. Kai would interpret the shutdown as confirmation of his fears. Soren would feel judged and retreat further. One night, Kai had a particularly bad panic attack. He'd convinced himself that Soren was at another guy's apartment. He'd texted Soren repeatedly, getting no response, and his mind had spiraled into dark places. When Soren finally responded, he'd been in the shower, his phone in another room. Kai had been waiting for him outside his apartment, tears streaming down his face. "Where were you?" Kai demanded. "I was in the shower, Kai. I told you I was going to shower." "No, you didn't. You said you'd be home, but you weren't answering your phone. I thought you were with someone else." "I was literally in my apartment," Soren said, and his voice was tired. "I was taking a shower, that's it." "I know, but nothing," Soren said. "Kai, I can't live like this. I can't have you questioning where I am every moment of the day. I can't be responsible for your anxiety." "I'm not asking you to be responsible for my anxiety. I'm asking you to respond to my texts." "I do respond to your texts. But there are times when I can't, and I shouldn't have to explain myself every single time." Kai felt his chest tighten. "So you don't want to be with me?" "That's not what I said." "Then what are you saying?" Soren was quiet for a long moment. "I'm saying that I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what you need, and I'm tired of feeling like I'm failing you all the time." Kai felt something break inside him. "So you do want to break up?" "I don't know," Soren said, and he sounded as lost as Kai felt. "I don't know what I want anymore." They didn't break up that night. But they also didn't fix anything. They just went inside, went to bed, and lay on opposite sides of the mattress, not touching, both of them convinced that the other person was going to leave. Chapter 12. The crisis point. By the middle of the semester, everything was falling apart. Kai's grades were suffering because he couldn't focus. His anxiety had gotten worse, not better. He was having panic attacks almost daily. He'd stopped going to therapy because he couldn't afford it, and his university's counseling services had a 3-month waiting list. Soren was withdrawing further. He'd stopped initiating contact. He'd stopped kissing Kai. He'd stopped trying. He was just going through the motions of being in a relationship without actually being present. They were still working on the project, but it had become mechanical. They'd meet, they'd work, they'd leave. No conversation. No connection. Just the bare minimum to get the assignment done. One day, Kai finally snapped. "I can't do this anymore," he said during one of their study sessions. "I can't be with someone who doesn't want to be with me. I can't spend my entire time with you wondering if you're going to leave. It's killing me." Soren looked at him with an expression that was impossible to read. "So what do you want to do?" "I don't know. Break up. Stay together. I don't know what you want." "I don't know either," Soren said quietly. "Well, that's not good enough," Kai said, and his voice was shaking. "I need to know if you want to be with me. I need to know if this is worth fighting for." Soren was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I don't know if I know how to love you the way you need to be loved." Kai felt tears spring to his eyes. "Then we're done. We're actually done." He packed up his materials and left, expecting Soren to call after him, to say something, to fight for him. But Soren didn't. He just let him go. Kai didn't go to class for a week. He called in sick to his part-time job. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, convinced that he'd made a terrible mistake, that he should have been more patient, that he should have accepted Soren's limitations. But he also knew that he couldn't keep living like that. He couldn't keep spiraling about whether Soren was cheating or leaving. He couldn't keep trying to extract emotions from someone who didn't know how to give them. On the 8th day, his roommate forced him to get up and shower. "You need to call your therapist," his roommate said. "You need help." Kai knew he was right. He called Dr. Morrison's office and was surprised to find that she had a cancellation. He went in that afternoon. "I broke up with him," Kai told her. "Or we broke up, I don't know, it's complicated." "Tell me what happened," Dr. Morrison said. Kai told her everything, about Soren's emotional detachment, about his own anxiety spiraling, about the cycle they'd gotten trapped in, about the panic attacks and the suspicion and the way Soren had just let him leave without fighting. "It sounds like you both have significant mental health challenges," Dr. Morrison said when he was done. "And you were trying to navigate a relationship without the proper support. So it's my fault for being too anxious." "No," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "It's not your fault, but I do want to point out that you were trying to manage Soren's emotions while also managing your own. That's not sustainable. So what do I do? Right now, you focus on yourself. You focus on your anxiety. You focus on building a life that doesn't depend on someone else's emotional availability. And if Soren decides he wants to work on himself, that's his choice. But it's not your responsibility to make that happen." Kai nodded, but it didn't feel better. It just felt like the end of something that had meant everything to him. Soren spent the week after Kai left in a state of numb detachment. He went to class, he did his work, he existed, but he wasn't really living. He was just going through the motions the way he always did. But this time, it felt different. This time, he wasn't numb because he didn't feel anything. He was numb because he felt too much, and the only way to survive it was to shut it all down. He replayed the moment Kai had left over and over. He thought about all the things he should have said, should have done, should have been. He'd failed, just like he always failed at relationships. He'd gotten too close to someone, and when it mattered, he hadn't known how to show up for them. On the 8th day, he did something he'd never done before. He called his father. "I need to talk to you about something," he said when his father answered. "This isn't a good time, Soren. I'm in a meeting." "I know, but I need to say this anyway." Soren took a breath. "I think I'm emotionally damaged because of how you raised me. And I think it's affecting my relationships, and I think I need help." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "That's not my problem," his father said finally. "You're an adult. You need to figure it out on your own." Soren hung up without responding. He sat in his apartment in the dark and realized that he couldn't keep living like this, that he couldn't keep being the person his father had made him, that if he wanted to have any chance at happiness, at connection, at love, he had to change. And the only way to change was to get help. So he called the university counseling center and made an appointment. It took 3 weeks to get in, but he did it. He sat in the waiting room, terrified, and filled out intake forms that asked him to describe his mental health. He wrote, "I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to express emotions. I'm afraid that I'm fundamentally incapable of loving someone." The therapist, Dr. Reeves, was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and an office that smelled like lavender. "So, Soren," she said, settling into her chair, "tell me what brought you in today." And Soren, for the first time in his life, told someone the truth about himself, about his father, about his emotional detachment, about Kai, about the way he'd let someone he loved walk away because he didn't know how to fight for them. By the end of the session, he was crying, actually crying, which he couldn't remember doing since he was a child. "This is good," Dr. Reeves said. "This is the beginning of healing." Soren didn't feel like it was good. He felt like he was breaking apart. But he kept showing up to therapy, week after week, and slowly something started to shift. Unspoken. A BL novel, final chapters, chapter 13. The slow healing 3 months passed. Kai rebuilt his life piece by piece. He got back into therapy, found a therapist who specialized in anxiety disorders, and started working on grounding techniques and cognitive behavioral therapy. He focused on his studies. He spent time with friends. He built a life that didn't revolve around Soren. It hurt. God, it hurt, but it was necessary. Soren, meanwhile, was doing the hard work of therapy. Dr. Reeves was patient but direct. She didn't let him off the hook. She challenged his beliefs about himself. She helped him understand that his emotional detachment wasn't a character flaw. It was a survival mechanism that had once protected him but was now holding him back. "Your father taught you that emotions were weakness," Dr. Reeves said during one session. "But emotions aren't weakness, Soren. They're information. They tell you what matters, and right now you're ignoring that information because you're afraid." "I'm not afraid," Soren said automatically. "You are," Dr. Reeves said gently. "You're terrified of being seen, of losing people, and that's okay. Fear is okay, but you have to feel it to move through it." Soren started keeping a feelings journal, which felt absurd and vulnerable and absolutely necessary. He'd write things like, "Today I felt sad when I saw someone who looked like Kai. I felt ashamed that I couldn't tell him how I felt. I felt afraid that I'd ruined everything." The words felt clumsy and foreign, but they were honest. By the end of 3 months, Soren had made progress. He was more aware of his emotions. He was starting to understand that expressing feelings didn't make him weak. He was learning that vulnerability was actually a strength, but he still hadn't reached out to Kai. Chapter 14. The unexpected meeting. It happened at the library. Kai was studying for his finals, sitting in his usual corner. He'd gotten used to the absence of Soren. It still hurt, but the sharp pain had dulled into a persistent ache. Then he heard a familiar voice. "Hi!" Kai looked up. Soren was standing there, looking nervous in a way Kai had never seen before. His hands were shaking slightly. He looked like he was bracing for rejection. "Hi," Kai said carefully. His heart was hammering in his chest. "Can we talk?" Soren asked. They found a study room. Kai's mind was racing. Was Soren here to get closure, to say goodbye, to finally end things officially? Soren sat down across from him, not next to him. The distance felt intentional. I've been in therapy, Soren said without preamble, for 3 months, and I've been working on my emotional detachment and my inability to express my feelings, and I've been thinking about you, a lot. Kai didn't say anything. He was afraid that if he spoke, he'd cry. I know I hurt you, Soren continued. I know I couldn't give you what you needed, and I know that's not your fault, it's mine. I was emotionally unavailable and I made you feel like you were too much, but you weren't too much, I was broken. You weren't broken, Kai said quietly. You were just hurt. Yeah, Soren said. I was hurt, and I've been working on that with Dr. Reeves. She's been helping me understand why I shut down, why I can't express my emotions, why I push people away. That's good, Kai said. I'm glad you're getting help. I'm not here to ask you to take me back, Soren said. I'm not here to ask for another chance. I'm here because I owe you an explanation and an apology and the truth about how I feel. Kai's breath caught. I love you, Soren said. His voice was shaky, and it was clear how much it cost him to say those words. I've loved you since that day in the bathroom during anatomy lecture. I've loved you through the project and the coffee shop meetings and the first kiss. I've loved you even when I was too scared to admit it. And I've loved you these past 3 months, even though we weren't together. Kai felt tears slide down his cheeks. I don't expect you to feel the same way, Soren continued. I don't expect you to forgive me or take me back, but I needed you to know that this wasn't about you. It was about me and my inability to be vulnerable, and I'm working on that. I'm still working on that, but I wanted you to know. For a long moment, Kai couldn't speak. He was too overwhelmed by emotion, sadness and hope and hurt and love all tangled together. I still love you too, Kai said finally, but I can't go back to how things were. Soren nodded like he'd expected that. I know. I need to know that you're committed to this, to therapy, to working on yourself, because I can't be responsible for your emotional health again. I can't manage your feelings while managing my own. I know, Soren said, and I'm committed. I'm going to keep going to therapy. I'm going to keep working on expressing my emotions, and I'm going to try to be better. Not for you, but for me, because I want to be someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved. That's all I can ask, Kai said. They didn't get back together that day, but something shifted. A door that had been closed started to open. Chapter 15. The slow rebuild over the next month, Kai and Soren started spending time together again. Not as a couple, but as two people who were working on themselves and learning how to communicate. They'd meet at the coffee shop and talk. Really talk. Soren would share things he was learning in therapy. Kai would share his progress with his anxiety. They'd be vulnerable with each other in ways they hadn't been before. I realized in therapy that I was using emotional detachment as a way to avoid being hurt, Soren said one afternoon. If I didn't feel anything, then nothing could hurt me. But the problem is, if you don't feel anything, you can't feel love either. That makes sense, Kai said. My therapist talks about how my anxiety is trying to protect me from bad things happening, but it ends up preventing good things too. How do you manage that? Soren asked. Slowly, Kai said. I'm learning to feel the fear without letting it control me, to ask myself if the threat is real or if my brain is making it up. It's not perfect, but it's getting better. One night, Soren kissed Kai. It wasn't planned. They were walking home from the library, and the moment just happened. It was soft and tentative, asking a question rather than making a statement. Is this okay? Soren asked when they broke apart. Yeah, Kai said. It's okay. But they still didn't officially get back together. They were taking it slowly, building something new from the ashes of what had broken. It was painful and beautiful and terrifying. Chapter 16. The couple's therapy. After 2 months of rebuilding, Soren suggested something that would have been unthinkable before. I think we should do couples therapy, he said. Together, so we can learn how to communicate better, so we can both understand what we need from each other. Kai was surprised. You want to do that? Yeah, Soren said. I want to do this right. I want to learn how to be in a relationship in a healthy way. And I think having a professional help us would be good. They found a couples therapist, Dr. Hassan, who specialized in relationships affected by mental health issues. Their first session was awkward and painful. So, Kai, Dr. Hassan said, what brought you into couples therapy? We broke up because our relationship became unhealthy, Kai said. I was anxious all the time, and Soren couldn't express his emotions, and we got trapped in a cycle where I was always asking for reassurance and he was always shutting down. And Soren, how do you see it? I think I was emotionally unavailable, Soren said, and I didn't know how to express my feelings. And when Kai tried to help me, I felt like he was trying to fix me, so I pushed him away. Okay, Dr. Hassan said. So you both recognize the patterns. That's good. Now, let's talk about what you both need from each other in a healthy relationship. Over the next several weeks, they worked through their issues in therapy. Dr. Hassan taught them communication techniques. She helped them understand each other's triggers. She gave them tools to manage conflict. One particularly difficult session, Kai had to say something he'd been avoiding. I need to know that you're not going to shut down when things get difficult, Kai said to Soren. I need to know that you're going to try to communicate, even if it's hard. I can do that, Soren said. But I also need you to understand that sometimes I'm going to need time to process my emotions before I can talk about them. That doesn't mean I'm avoiding you. It means I'm trying to understand what I'm feeling so I can express it. Okay, Kai said. That's fair. I can work with that. And I need to know that you're not going to spiral and assume the worst about me, Soren continued. I need you to ask me directly if something is wrong instead of assuming I'm cheating or leaving. I'm working on that in my individual therapy, Kai said. But I can't promise it won't happen. My anxiety is part of me. But I can promise that I'll recognize when I'm spiraling and I'll try to ground myself before I accuse you of things. That's all I'm asking, Soren said. By the end of the couple's therapy sessions, they had a foundation. Not a perfect foundation, but a real one. They understood each other better. They knew what they needed. They were ready to try again. Chapter 17. The second first date, they decided to make it official on a Saturday afternoon. Soren took Kai to the same park where they'd had their first kiss. They sat on a bench overlooking the water and Soren took Kai's hand. I know we've been rebuilding for a while, Soren said. And I know we're both still working on ourselves, but I want to be with you, officially, if you want that too. I do, Kai said. But I want to do this differently than before. I want us both to maintain our own lives, our own friendships, our own therapy. I don't want to lose myself in you again. I don't want that either, Soren said. I want us to be partners, not dependent on each other, but there for each other. Okay, Kai said. Then yes, I want to be with you. Soren kissed him, and this time it felt different. It felt like a beginning rather than a desperate attempt to hold onto something fragile. Chapter 18. Learning to Love. The next few months were about learning to love each other in healthy ways. Soren was still learning how to express his emotions. Some days were easier than others, but he was trying. He'd tell Kai when he was feeling stressed or anxious or happy. He'd ask Kai about his day and actually listen to the answer. He'd initiate conversations about their relationship instead of shutting down. One night, he said something that made Kai's heart stop. I'm proud of you, Soren said. I'm proud of how hard you're working on your anxiety. I'm proud of how you're building a life that's not dependent on me. I'm proud of you. Kai felt tears spring to his eyes. Thank you, that means a lot. You mean a lot, Soren said. You're not just someone I love, you're someone I respect, someone I admire, someone I want to build a life with. And Kai was learning too. He was learning to sit with his anxiety without letting it control him. He was learning to trust Soren, not blindly, but based on Soren's consistent actions and effort. He was learning that love didn't require constant reassurance. It required patience and communication and willingness to work through difficult things. One day, Kai realized he hadn't had a panic attack in 2 weeks, then a month, then 6 weeks. They weren't gone, they still happened occasionally, but they were less frequent, less intense. I think I'm getting better, he told Dr. Morrison. You are, she said. You've done a lot of hard work, Kai. You should be proud of yourself. Chapter 19. The projects end near the end of the semester. Kai and Soren finally completed their project. The case study on informed consent and medical legal intersections was thorough and well-researched and genuinely impressive. When they presented it to the class, they worked seamlessly together. Kai handled the medical side. Soren handled the legal side. They answered questions from the professor with confidence and knowledge. Afterward, the professor pulled them aside. This is excellent work, she said. Truly, you two clearly work well together. Have you considered doing research together? Publishing. Kai and Soren exchanged a look. A year ago, that would have been impossible. They could barely be in the same room without tension. But now, the idea of working together on future projects felt natural. Well, think about it, Soren said. That night, they celebrated with dinner at the same restaurant where they'd had their first date. We did it, Kai said, raising his glass. We finished the project. We did, Soren agreed. And we did it together without falling apart. Well, we fell apart, Kai said. But then we put ourselves back together. Yeah, Soren said. We did. Chapter 20. The quiet confession winter break came and Kai went home to visit his family. His parents noticed immediately that something had changed in him. You seem happier, his mother said, more relaxed. I'm in a better place, Kai said. I've been working on my anxiety, and I'm in a relationship with someone who really cares about me. Tell us about him, his mother said, and there was genuine interest in her voice. Kai told them about Soren, about how they'd met, about the difficulties they'd faced, about the therapy and the work they'd both done. It sounds like you both love each other very much, his father said. We do, Kai said, but we also love ourselves, and I think that's important. When Kai came back from winter break, Soren was waiting for him at the airport. He was holding flowers and looking nervous. Hi, Soren said when Kai came through security. Hi, Kai replied, smiling. Soren kissed him right there in the airport, and Kai felt something settle in his chest, a sense of rightness, of home. On the drive back to campus, Soren said something that Kai had been waiting to hear for a long time. I want to spend my life with you, Soren said. Not because I'm afraid of losing you, not because I need you to complete me, but because I love you, and I want to build something real with you. I want that too, Kai said. I want to wake up next to you. I want to fight with you and make up. I want to support you while you're in therapy and have you support me while I'm managing my anxiety. I want all of it. Even the hard parts, Soren asked. Especially the hard parts, Kai said, because that's where the real love is, not in the easy moments, but in the moments where we choose to stay and work through things together. Chapter 21. 1 year later, Kai and Soren had moved in together 6 months ago. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments where Soren would shut down, and Kai would have to remind him to communicate. There were still moments where Kai's anxiety would spike, and Soren would have to be patient while Kai worked through it. But they were building something real, something that could withstand the difficulties of life and mental health challenges. On their 1 year anniversary of getting back together, Soren did something that shocked Kai. He proposed. They were at home, cooking dinner together. When Soren suddenly got down on one knee. I know this is unconventional, Soren said. I know we're both still working on ourselves, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know that you make me want to be better. I know that loving you has taught me how to feel again. So, Kai, will you marry me? Kai said yes through tears. The proposal wasn't grand or dramatic. There were no rose petals or elaborate plans. It was just Soren, in their kitchen, finally able to express the depth of his love in the clearest way possible. And that was everything. Epilogue. 2 years later, Kai was in his final year of medical school. Soren was in his final year of law school. They were both thriving in their respective fields, but more importantly, they were thriving together. They'd gotten married in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Both of them still went to therapy, individual and couples. They still had difficult moments, but they had the tools to navigate them. One evening, they were sitting on the couch, Kai's head on Soren's shoulder, watching the rain outside their apartment window. Do you remember when you had that panic attack in the bathroom during anatomy lecture? Soren asked. Yeah, Kai said. I was so embarrassed. I saw you that day, Soren said, and I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. I wanted to tell you that you were going to be okay, but I didn't have the words. And now, Kai asked. Now I can tell you, Soren said. You're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Not because the anxiety will go away or because I'll suddenly become perfectly emotionally expressive, but because we're going to keep showing up for each other. We're going to keep working on ourselves. We're going to keep choosing each other even on the hard days. Kai turned to look at him. I love you. I love you too, Soren said. And I mean it in a healthy way. I love you because you make my life better, not because I need you to survive. I love you because you're worth loving. You're worth loving too, Kai said. Even when you're emotionally constipated and can't express your feelings, even when you shut down instead of communicating, you're worth loving. Soren smiled, and Kai saw it, the vulnerability in his eyes, the openness that had taken so long to cultivate. This was Soren, truly seen and truly loved, and that was everything. Author's note. Unspoken is a story about two people with different mental health challenges learning to love each other and themselves. It's not a story about love conquering all or mental health issues being fixed by the power of romance. It's a story about the hard work of therapy, the courage it takes to be vulnerable, and the slow, messy process of building something real. Both Kai and Soren still struggle. They still have difficult moments. But they've learned that those moments don't define them or their relationship. What defines them is their commitment to showing up, to communicating, and to choosing each other, not out of desperation or fear, but out of genuine love and respect. Mental health challenges are real. Emotional detachment is real. Anxiety is real. And love, true, healthy love, is also real. These things can coexist. They can be navigated. And with the right support, they can lead to something beautiful. This is their story. A story of two broken people learning to be whole, not together, but alongside each other.